I have never seen so many people wake up at the accelerated speed that I've seen in the last couple of weeks, even couple of months, than in all of the last couple of years. If you go to TikTok, if you go to Instagram, Facebook, people are talking about this like it was a spell that they were under, and they're just literally snapping awake right now, asking critical thinking questions, questioning the narrative, everything that's happening from the Trump stuff to the COVID, all of these studies and things coming out. And then now you have this Russia-Ukraine situation. Now, if you haven't heard, the US, the Pentagon, the DOJ, whoever, they've come out, the White House, these guys, they've come out and said, okay, there's a big problem here because classified, highly classified documents, and I'm looking at it right now as we speak. I'm looking at a map and several other documents. I'm not going to show it on this particular video. You can go Google it and you can look it up. But these documents were leaked. And they're saying it's a problem. So they're admitting that these were classified, highly sensitive documents, stuff that probably the high level echelon people, they get as a briefing, because I'm looking at it. It's a summary of, a map of the layout of which troops, what, tanks and various things are where. And it's showing the state of the conflict as of a particular date. It's a very recent date, March, in fact. And this, and the backstory quickly is that it was leaked on a Minecraft server. Somebody who was playing, the game and made a bet and all that stuff. And apparently this was stuck on a Minecraft server for some time. And then it got leaked to Discord and then to 4chan and then Telegram and many other places. So if you do a Google search, you will see this, but they're also trying to clean house. They're trying to get rid of this. But of course, if it's out there, it's not going, especially if it's going into the underground areas, 4chans, Discords, private channels, and that sort of platform, it's not going to go away. So you can go look this up right now. I'm looking at it as I'm speaking. And one thing that I want to tell you is that I've been saying this for a very long time, but you have to wake up to the spell of Satan, quite frankly, because the narrative that's being portrayed, how they want you to think, this is being done in a carefully crafted way so that there's several tools and processes that they use. One of them is hyperbole. They're going to tell you, okay, hey, Russia, they're invading, they're so terrible. They're gonna kind of snip together a couple of things. And I've said last year, as this had begun, that to counter the narrative that's being set, that they're saying, oh, Russia and Putin, they're so bad, they're invading, they're killing people. And depending on how you want to receive that information without doing due diligence, without asking the Lord for discernment, then you're going to get caught up in the lies. And so the point of this whole thing in this video is not to convince you of Russia, let's be pro-Russia, let's back Putin. I'm not saying those things. I'm saying you have to get to the essence of a narrative, of a truth, of the facts, so that you're not bombarded with propaganda and a left-leaning, even a right-leaning, any leaning bias that you have, but rather you're taking facts, you're taking things as it is, and you're looking at a person, you're looking at a leader, and you're saying, okay, what are the objective characteristics of this person? Do they mess up sometimes? Are they strong in certain areas? Do I need to look at them with a certain lens? How is it that I want to view this person without putting on a certain hat? I've talked about putting on certain hats, a patriotic hat, a Western hat, all these hats that are clouding your judgment to looking at a country, looking at a leader for who they are. Russia, I've said before, they're not there to invade Ukraine in terms of territorial subjugation. I said before, God has given me prophetic dreams, prophetic words, that they are there for a special military operation. They're being used by the Lord to expose, right? And these things are coming out right now. You can choose to believe it or not. More of it will come out. And you can see the classified documents that have been admittingly shown as fact. Some of them, and let me make this warning, some of them are doctored. So you want to be very careful. You're not going to look at all these and just think it's the real deal. Some of them have been doctored. You can tell if it's photoshopped or not. Some of them are very good at tweaking it. So you got to be very careful with regards to that. And I've even talked about that last year. People taking video game footage, people taking doctored photos and making it seem worse than it is to set the narrative. And so this is why God has allowed some of us to counter this narrative so that you can you're not skewed one way, that you come back to the middle, that you can be recalibrated to say, okay, the language that's being used, the words that are being used, it's going to give you, because of hyperbole, because of how the rhetoric and the emotion is going to influence you, it's going to skew your perspective in a certain way. And so one of the things that people are thinking across the world is that, oh, Russia completely invaded Ukraine. This map, this classified map that I'm looking at, is still showing Russia in the very eastern part of Ukraine. People think they're in Kiev. People think they're, bombing these things. Yes, they're bombing certain key targets. And even this will come out. Bioweapon facilities, underground child trafficking, like harvesting human, whatever, all this crazy stuff, all the money laundering, all of these things, weapons, caching, storage, transportation. I mean, whatever is happening, right? These things, people have said, I've said before, that it will be exposed because too many people are putting Ukraine on a pedestal. I'm not saying the whole country is evil. I'm not saying everybody's bad. But what's being perceived, what's being narrated in the mainstream realm is crumbling. And these things will come to light. The truth will come to light. And again, I'm not saying that Putin and Russia are saviors, but what they're doing to dismantle the deep state, to bring down this wickedness that's happening in Ukraine, it's not being portrayed as truth. And even this map, like I've said before, they're on the eastern part. The Donetsk, Lugansk, right? They've also declared independence. And then I think they're in certain parts of Crimea and then this Kherson Oblast area. And so it's very east, right? So nobody, if you're thinking Russia invaded Ukraine, like, oh, they're all the way across and and I've said like, oh, completely territorially, subjugating this country. You are gravely mistaken. Even these classified documents are showing that they're strategically attacking, dismantling, and getting the people back their freedoms and to safety, and as well doing other crazy work, right? And they've also presented this to the UN Security Council. Nobody wants to believe it. But thankfully, the normies are waking up. The people that have been sleeping, they've been eating up the mainstream narrative, they are getting to alternative sources and saying, okay, let's look at these classified documents. Let's look at 4chan. Let's look at Telegram. Let's look at these channels. And if you go to Telegram channels, right, there's many that are showing, I follow 2 of them, right, just on the Ukraine and that area. Newly right now, Donbass, Devutska. And then there's another one, Intel Slava Z. Those are 2 that show literally what's like on the ground footage of certain things that are going on. And so I'm saying all this because now's the time for people to wake up. Now's the time to break free from the spell that the mainstream media is casting on you. And you have to think bigger than trying to take a couple of pieces and putting things together, filling in the gaps and thinking that you know the full story. Rather, you have to be objective and saying, okay, maybe that's true. Maybe that isn't. Maybe it's misinformation. Maybe it's being skewed intentionally for a reason. Maybe there's a bigger optics play. Maybe it's to disrupt the enemy and allow people at the expense of the general population believing it's bad, at the expense of them, for the sake of the greater good. So again, it's 5-dimensional, 5D warfare, 5th generation warfare, but realize that there's more than meets the eye. There's more than how CNN, NBC, Reuters, BBC, these guys are portraying it out to be. And so again, people are waking up right now. This is another classic case of God correcting narratives, God setting it straight, allowing the darkness to be exposed and then correcting it with truth and with light. Again, nobody's here worshiping anybody. Nobody's here trying to be pro this and right this and whatever leaning that you want to say. People just want to know the truth. People want to know facts. People don't want to be deceived. And to the best of, it not compromising, national security and any other war type stuff, as long as they're fed the right information, let them think through it. Don't spoon feed by using hyperbole and using certain narratives to try to get you to think a certain way. Take the hat off, take the Western hat off, take the biased hat off, and put on the mind of Christ. Put on the full armor of God, and ask the Lord. Allow the Holy Spirit to work in you and say, okay, what's going on here? I want to know the truth. So this is what's happening. It's a good time. Again, a lot of people are just going to cringe at the Ukraine. The moment I mention Ukraine and Russia, people are going to cringe. But again, these things need to be brought forth. You can't brush things under the rug. If your marriage is in disarray and you don't want to talk about, difficult topics and you just want to brush it under the rug, your marriage is just going to crumble. It's just going to spiral downward. So these major issues, they need to be addressed, and we have to have the correct perspective. So God bless you guys. Love you guys. Talk to you guys very soon.